Good afternoon and good Shabbos, and welcome today to Lunch Break with the Rabbi. As we conclude this week and starting the Torah from new, starting all the way from the beginning of the book of Genesis, as we get ready to read this week the Torah reading of the book of Genesis. We start the Torah from the beginning as we come off a month of holidays, but this week is not only the beginning of the book of Genesis, but we'll also be reading we'll also be blessing the upcoming month of Cheshvan. An interesting contrast to the month that we're leaving, the month of Tishrei. The month of Tishrei was action-packed with holidays galore. From Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Simchas Torah, there wasn't a week without a holiday. The holidays that we're about to go into, the month that we're about to go into, there is no holidays whatsoever. It's the month of Cheshvan. In fact, it's called Bitter Cheshvan because there are no holidays in it. But let's look a little bit on where we're coming from, where we're going to, and how we can fuse the two together. So what we have over here is we're coming from the month of Tishrei, celebrating Simchas Torah. One of the things we find in the world today, especially in the current pandemic, is something which troubles many, is the concept of depression. Depression, mental illness, has taken a forefront in many different ways and for many different people. Mental illness, something that was shied away many years ago, today is addressed and taken care of, and people go to a shrink and psychologist for whatever it may be to deal with their mental illness. But where does it come from? Where does it stem from? You know, the Torah tells us very interestingly in the words of the Tochacha when it rebukes the Jewish people and tells them about their sins. One of the things that the Torah rebukes the Jewish people about is the fact of not serving God with joy. What does that mean? You know, when God tells us to put on tefillin, there's a certain way how we put on tefillin. You put it on, you're done. You're good for the day. Whatever mitzvah it may be, there's a certain measure and time when you do the mitzvah and you're finished. But how can God command me about a feeling, about an emotion? How can God tell me to do a certain emotion? What if I'm just feeling gloomy? Things are going not the right way. Unfortunately, during this pandemic and during people's health they have to be locked in their homes, they can't go to work. There are many reasons that they can be upset and have the opposite of joy. So what's the Torah telling me? Because you haven't served God with joy. The Baal Shem Tov once said a very amazing thing. He said joy, or he's actually put it in depression, may not be an abrogation. There's no commandment against that depression. But it can lead to many abrogations. And therefore the antidote of not leading to any of those abrogations is to have joy. And therefore joy is so monumental and so important in Jewish philosophy and especially in Hasidic philosophy. Joy is what gives the person the impetus, the excitement, and the fortitude to be able to overcome any type of thing that may be bothering them. As we know, joy breaks through all barriers. When you're joyful, you're dancing in a circle. There's no beginning, there's no end. Because joy is able to take you to places where you can't go otherwise. On contrast to depression, it contracts and it causes a person to do things that they've never imagined. So what happened here? How do we as people And how does the Torah and God command us to be joyful? The good thing is that God gives us these little refueling stations. And throughout the year, there's holidays. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Simchas Torah. What can be better? A time where God tells us, you have to rejoice. So when we're given the commandment to rejoice, we're then given also the power and the ability to take that rejoicing. The question is, what do we do with that power that we energized ourselves? With that rejoicing, are we letting it just stay there and after the holidays end, boom, go back to the way we are? Or do we take whatever we've packed on? As in the words of the first Chabad Rabbi, he said, after Simchas Torah, we have to take everything that we gathered during the holidays and start unpacking and utilize it and make sure it has an effect on us the rest of the year. So this joy that we're commanded on these specific times, we are given ways to rejoice. But then we have to take that joy and make sure it has a ripple effect into our day-to-day life. But the question is, how do we do that? So to look at that, we have to go back to the first time depression is found, or when depression was created. And then we can find out why joy is so important. God put Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And he tells Adam and Eve that you should not eat from the tree of knowledge. Unfortunately, they don't listen to God, and they are then expelled from the Garden of Eden, and they are cursed. Each one of the items who have transgressed God's word is cursed a different way. The snake has to then crawl on the ground and eat earth. The woman who took from the tree and gave it to her husband, she then has child pains, birthing pains. And the man has to then work for his food. And the question that the commentators ask, why is that a curse for the man? Wasn't Adam and Eve put into the Garden of Eden? The word that God says is la'avdal l'shamra, to serve and to guard. They would have to work regardless. What's the difference? And the difference is in the words that God uses when he tells man that he'll have to work before being expelled from the Garden of Eden and after. God also told Adam and Eve that they will have children while they were in the Garden of Eden. But he also said they will have children after they leave. What was the difference? And there's one word difference. Be'etzev, with depression, with difficulty. God tells man that when you will come out of the Garden of Eden, you will have to work. But that work is going to be with difficulty. It's going to take a burden. The same idea is also you're going to have children, but be'etzev tel bilbonim. You'll bear children with difficulty and dispiriteness. You will eat with difficulty and dispiriteness. What God is telling the Jewish people, what God is telling humankind, that there are two ways how we can work. There's two ways how we can view what we do in life. We can look at it as a badge of honor that God has given us the ability to rectify, refine, and purify the world. Or I can look at it as a difficulty and distress. Oy, why do I have to wake up in the morning? Why do I have to have kids? What kind of pain in the neck are they? And that's the two views of life. These two views of life were actually amplified by Adam's own son, Cain. Cain, as you recall, we spoke about yesterday, killed Abel. But later on, the Torah tells us that he also had a child, Hanoch, and he named his city after Hanoch. Wow. Why does the Torah tell us that? And then it tells us that there was another Hanoch many years later who followed what God said, but because everybody else was corrupt, God took him away. What do these things have to tell us? In fact, the book of Genesis, just this week's Torah reading, covers a span of 1,000 years. But these two episodes are one of the ones that are mentioned. Because Cain was teaching us also, humankind, that there are two types of Hanochs. There are two types of humankind. There's one who builds cities, and there's one who destroys. And then there's even a spiritual one who only is into himself, but he is not building, and therefore God has to take him. We all have different methods and modes in life of different ways how we work. There are different reasons why we go to work. We go to work because we have to earn a living. But why do we earn a living? What's the purpose of living? Joy gives us the meaning of living. What God is telling every single every single person, humankind at large, be like Adam before the sin of the tree of knowledge. The sin of the tree of knowledge brought into this world a terrible thing called depression. A reason of why we're upset that we're working, the distastefulness in what we do, not finding pleasure in bringing this world to perfection. So what does God tell us? Every single one of us. We have stations in life where we refuel. Simchas Torah, Sukkot, Passover, Shavuos, all these special occasions which help us give meaning into our life, which help us understand and appreciate what true joy is about. To tell us that we're alive and well, to be able to work, yes. To be able to earn money, yes. But what do I do with that money? What do I do with that work? How do I appreciate it? Is only with joy. If I'm being depressed and upset, how do I then do my job? Therefore, what is a key ingredient? What does God tell us? Because you haven't served God with joy. If you don't serve God with joy, if you don't find joy in what you do, then you're not doing the mission of rectifying the sin of the tree of knowledge. The sin of the tree of knowledge brought about depression. You're falling into that same trap that Adam and Eve did. Over here, the Torah reminds us, coming from these wonderful holidays, we're about to start the first Shabbos of the year where we begin the Torah from new, the book of Genesis. The first Chabad Rebbe would say the way we situate ourselves on the Shabbos Bereshis, on the first Shabbos, that's the way we set the system for the rest of the year. Let us remember, we are still energized with the joy of Simchas Torah. Let us not get sidetracked by all the different noise that's going on around us. Let us focus on the prize. The prize is making this world a better place with joy. Take that joy from Simchas Torah. Let it permeate your being. Let it change who you are. That whatever you do should be with excitement, happiness, and joy. Because joy breaks through barriers, and it will break through this barrier as well. The barrier of all the obstacles in life that we're going through. The barrier of this exile, and bring about ultimate salvation, the greatest joy, the coming of Mashiach, may be now. Amen. God bless you for a wonderful Shabbos. I want to wish you the very best in this Shabbos Bereshis, the first Shabbos where we begin the year. A great beginning, fueled with the joy of Simchas Torah. Dance the day away. Let it change your life, change the way you look at things, and ultimately we will all celebrate together. Shabbat Shalom, have a good Shabbos, and see you again on Monday at 1 o'clock, lunch break with the Rabbi. All the best. Looking forward to hearing from you, seeing you soon. By the way, just a little extra comment. If anybody has any questions or suggestions of what you would like to discuss next week, feel free to email me, message me, and we will be able to cover those subjects. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Looking forward to hearing from you and seeing you. All the best.